Good afternoon, engineering and manufacturing educators, and welcome back to the Engineering and Manufacturing Educators Exchange, the Educator's Toolbox. Episode 10. I'm excited to bring this one. It's an idea that I've had that I haven't really been able to flush out. I've kind of seen a couple schools doing something similar and something wrapped around this, but mine's got a little different tilt on that. And we're going to talk about setting up kind of a industry style and looking project that actually has different divisions of work within it and some little nuances into it that I think could be interesting. I'd love to see where you might go with it. If you think it's an interesting idea, if it's something that you might have similar, or maybe there's a new aspect of it. Again, I like to say my role when I was an educator, I felt was to dream up stuff and to come up with crazy ideas. Luckily, I had a colleague, Jamie, that was very good at kind of leveling me back down to earth, but also executing on those kind of wild ideas and being able to make them happen in some shape or form. They didn't always transpire the way I envisioned them, but that's also because when I'm dreaming, a lot of times I have this magic wand of unlimited resources and funding and equipment. So one of the things that we've talked about, and again, I really would love for you to give some feedback on this and to share what you're doing in this. And this stemmed around from our industry talking to us about our students needing a little more workplace skills, those soft skills or workforce skills around collaboration, understanding conflict, being able to work in a group, being able to work by themselves, and owning up to mistakes, how they share their successes, how they share with other people within the company, those things. And I always said, and I think I've said it in one of my other episodes, is if we went to an industry partner and had an hour meeting, 45 of that minutes was talking about soft skills and workplace skills. 15 minutes was actually talking about the job itself. So it's a very important part and ask of the industry. And so we wanted to think about, we can just go through and just talk about, hey, everybody should be working in teams. Let's work in a group. That's gonna talk about collaboration. We're gonna talk about how to work in a team. But I wanted to actively kind of control the scenario in my idea. I wanted to actively kind of put in some success and failure points within it. And so we looked at this as kind of a senior design in our 2-year program. We had a couple different options that we could put it in, but we chose one of our kind of later year, second year courses that are meant for the associate side of things. Later on, we kind of thought about moving it earlier, but I had left the college before we did that. So the idea was, how do you make a company within the course? And so we kind of strategized and we thought, okay, well, and I'm doing something new. I'm gonna try the whiteboard, maybe a little more interaction here. But we knew we had a business side we needed, right? So they needed to market the program or the part, the project, whatever it is. We know that works closely with engineering. We needed a design side of things as well. So we needed a group to be designed. We also then needed the make group. And so our idea on there was maybe collaborate. We were in the engineering design side. We work closely with the machining side. Maybe we collaborate on this project and kind of bring both worlds together in this, or vice versa. Maybe you're on the manufacturing side. You want to bring the design side into this, and maybe even bring in the business side in different areas of that. We also had kind of some logistics. And that was really, once we get the thing made and we need to get it put together, what does that assembly line look like? What are the things that we need to test, we need to measure, those kind of things. So we had this makeup of this and kind of thinking like, okay, how can we split this up into the teams? And one of my concerns is always, well, one group's kind of missing the other thing. So you tend to say, well, let's rotate those things. And I'm good with that. And I think where we tried to get to was thinking about a 16-week course, senior design course, is maybe if we have these kind of 4 areas, again, kind of the business operations, the marketing of that side, the cost and tracking all that. We have the design side, the make side, and the logistics side. That's 4 areas. Each person then could have that area for 4 weeks. And I think we had 2 train of thoughts there. We had the train of thought of, let's make it so that it's maybe 4 different projects, so that they get the entire cycle together. Or maybe, and this is where I had a little bit of a pivot, is at certain times within the process, I moved people and I threw in different things. So one of the ideas was, all right, let's take an issue where maybe I have a design person, let's call them design person A, and they're not doing very well. There's some issues I've noticed. I've given them 3 or 4 weeks. I've sat down with them. They're just not doing what they need to do. Well, maybe I fire them, or maybe I say, hey, we got to have production. Things got to get going. So I'm going to move you around and I'm going to switch maybe business operations A for design person A. And maybe I just bring it up as or the other thought I had was design person A, maybe they're doing well and I want to move into business. So now we create this little bit of a conflict. They're kind of like, well, why are you moving me? I've been trucking along. I've been doing this thing. That's kind of real world, right? That's that workplace skills of, hey, I've been doing what I need to do. You move me on something. Maybe I'm not as comfortable with that, but how do I adjust? And I'd rather them figure that out here and have those thoughts and kind of be a little bit angry and maybe even pissed off here so that they can kind of figure out their emotions, figure out how to balance that and create a pathway to move forward on that. So kind of recap on that is maybe taking someone that's not doing very well, or maybe taking someone that's highly succeeding, switching those two things, or switching those people, or maybe it's the same level of either way, but you switch their roles. Now you get that real world essence of change that is in there. One of the things I always kind of said to my students was, when you go into to see a nurse to get blood drawn or get something put in, you really don't want them to that to be their first time, but also you don't want them to do something and then not know how to functionally operate because of that error, because of that issue. You want them to have had gone through that issue, through those errors in their training when they were back in school. So they do that type of training. So same thing here. I want to give them enough to have conflict, to have these kind of questions in their head and understanding what's going on, but to have it here in school rather than out in the workplace at the time. So again, the idea is to make that conflict. The other thing I would introduce is a design change, and I know a lot of schools do that in their projects. Or if you're in a competition, you're doing design changes, but putting in that design change and putting in something that could be very small and something that's very large, and maybe it's back to back. Again, I want to introduce that conflict. I want to introduce that ability for them to kind of have this confusion on what needs to happen and this uncomfortability of doing things. And that was my goal as I generated this and started working with it. So those design changes, again, I think something very small is great because then they can say, oh, I got that. That's easy. Boom, 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 boom. It's done. Then we introduce something else that's larger where they got to go, well, I got to back up 5 steps. We got to change all of this. But I think that gets into that communication and that ability to work as a team is now they have to work with their other teams on those bigger design changes. So again, maybe it's design changes that are in each one of their little areas that is something small that they can get it done quick. Maybe it's a handful of those that they need to get done. Maybe you tease them with like, hey, I got your design change. It's really simple. And in a couple weeks, you give them like 3 or 4 of those design changes that are really simple, but they take up time to get done. And then in maybe 3 or 4 weeks, you give them something big where they really have to take a step back with that. Again, working on collaboration, working on whatever has to happen. The other thing was adding in side jobs. So the idea here was to say, okay, side jobs or side projects, I should say. That's probably a better way of saying that. So on the side projects is let's think about how to add something to create where they kind of have to then balance their time and have to figure out, do I do this or do I do this? And how much of one or the other did they need to do? And so thinking about maybe in the logistics is we add a side job of, hey, you got this 300 piece output that you need to work on right now. I need you to stop what you're doing for this 25 piece. I need you to come up with a plan for that. how many people are needed, what's the budget, what kind of machinery do you need, and really then maybe developing a PowerPoint presentation that they have to give, which takes time away from them understanding what the actual project needs, which is maybe 10 or 15, 20 parts, something like that, and how they get together. They got to pause and think about how they balance their time and that communication with the other teams. Maybe it's 3 or 4 in each one of those students that are in each one of these, and they've got to determine, hey, you two continue on that project, and you two continue on this new project, or start this new project and get it done. So introducing those side jobs, those side projects that they have to do. Then kind of the last thing in this was to think about them kind of being able to, how do they share their successes? How do they show that they're doing a good job? And I think that is then presentation skills, right? So wanted them to present, and the idea was to think about how do they present 2 different ways. First way is, how do they present to their boss? Their boss should understand the terminology, the machinery, the data, the information, the project. They should understand that. So for instance, is presenting to me as maybe the boss of this group, of this cell of business people, design, make, and logistics. I think I called the make production. I think we called it make at the time just because it was easier. But presenting, all right? So, hey, you're going to have to present every milestone. You're going to have to present to me, and I need you to share all the details. I need you to be nitty and gritty. I need you to dive into it. I need you to understand. I'm going to question you. I'm going to ask why you did this versus this, and really dive into that. The next presentation style is, like many of us and educators and industry people, is you have to present to people that are not familiar with what really is going on, are not familiar with manufacturing, are not familiar with engineering processes. So you need to create a presentation to keep them updated. So again, it might be the business person, it might be the CEO, it might be the external marketing people that are out of this. It might be that it's another company that's coming to look and invest that really has no idea what we do. It might be just a group that is trying to evaluate as a company, is this something we move forward, but they don't have a good understanding of what's happening. So how to present to them, because now we need to use different terminology. We might have to go into a little more detail on something. We either need to expand or we need to contract what we're talking about. And so we talk about those presentation skills. And again, about a 16-week program. At the end of the day, my big concern again was everybody getting a touch of something. And I think if we work it right, and when we did it, is everybody at least got a little bit of something. Others, certain people within there, they got a lot more of one thing than the other. And I think that was the consensus, is everybody got about 75% of their core area, and then 25% of everywhere else was what ended up happening in the process of this. At first, I was kind of bummed about that. It's like, oh man, they missed out on getting 80% of logistics, 80% of the manufacturing, 80% of the design. But then I thought, you know what? I'm a kind of step back from that and say they focus on an area that either they weren't good at or they were good at, and they worked on that area. Also, they did get a taste of everything else, which allows them to either find, oh, you know what? I like that. That 25% of that business operations that I did, I like that. I want to dive into that more. And we had conversations within my office, within others, saying, they're like, hey, I did a little bit of this. I'd like to do more. Where do I find that within the curriculum here? Where do I find that within the college? Same thing with make. We had a couple that started making stuff, and they wanted to do more CNC once they got there. We were doing 3D printing, some very light type of machining stuff, but they kind of determined that, maybe I want to dive into a little more machining. So showed them the pathway to get to machining, some basic courses to start on. So at the end of the day, I stepped back and I said, it's not the end of the world if they don't touch everything 100%. If they get a little piece of it, it ignites some fuel. It also shows maybe what they don't want to do. Maybe they find out that business operations, I want nothing to do with that. I want to stay on the design and engineering side. So, that's kind of the idea, is this project of bringing in those workforce skills, bringing in some of that confrontation, some of that ability to kind of really see what the real world's going to be like. And sometimes, especially at community college, you get great experience from students that are coming from industry that have dealt with this. And they can talk to those younger students. They can share their experiences. Maybe they kind of have that rethought of, you know what, back when I did this 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I handled that totally inappropriately. I want to help share. And also, I want to redo and figure out how to redo this situation again. So I share all that. We did it, I think, a couple times in our course in a couple sections that I taught. It did take some management skills with that. It took some pre-work with that. If I can find my document that I have on one of my jump drives, I'll share that kind of initial thought process and the layout that I had for it. But yeah, this is just an idea that I've had. We kind of piloted it. I think it can go further. I think there's a lot of opportunity to do it. And I think the great thing is, from an instructor standpoint, is you almost can't fail with it at the end of the day. It's at the end of the day, they got to make a part. You add in these little chunks of things. It's going to have its natural failures and up and down. I think you need to lay it out, make sure you understand when the milestones are, when you're going to make these changes, and how to kind of cover those changes, and not only cover those changes in terms of like, do they have enough time to actually make that change, but also, do you have enough time to kind of work on the fallout of that? Do you have enough time to maybe, hey, this changed, next week I'm gonna pull those three members to the side, and I'm gonna have a conversation with them about that issue. And that's the other thing we did in class. We did have a lot of discussions about what happened. Hey, Joe, I know you and Sarah got changed right there. Tell me about that experience. How did that feel? Where can we help each other on that? What made you angry? What made you happy? How did you adjust to both of those, or one or the other? So please leave your comments on how you're doing kind of some of the group project stuff, and how you're kind of relating it back to industry and workforce skills and workforce habits. I'd love to hear that. I know our other educators would as well. And like always, feel free to leave it on the YouTube channel, on the LinkedIn, anywhere you see it on social media, and ping me if you have something that you just don't want to share out loud, but would love to get some feedback, or have them just share with me. So again, episode 10, excited. Thought I'd do a little whiteboard, which wasn't much. It's different. I coached for a long time, so I'm comfortable in teaching, comfortable being at a whiteboard, drawing stuff up. So it's not like teaching a statics course where we're filling up the whole board. But I appreciate the time. Looking forward to episode 11 coming up. I'm not sure if it's next week or not, because I will be on vacation, but I might do one from the beach. So we'll see you on the other side. Keep engineering, keep making, keep designing.